Good morning all, I'm Smita. In the previous session we have discussed about the autotrophic mode of nutrition, and in that session we have discussed what is autotrophic mode of nutrition and the important example for it, that is photosynthesis, we have discussed in detail. So in this session we will discuss about the heterotrophic mode of nutrition. What is heterotrophic mode of nutrition, its type, and also we'll study in detail about the nutrition in case of human beings. So we'll start up with the chapter. What is heterotrophic mode of nutrition? It is a kind of nutrition in which an organism cannot produce its own food from an inorganic raw materials, and they are dependent on the other organism for the food, is called as heterotrophic mode of nutrition. This is organisms which cannot prepare their own food, but they are dependent on the other organisms. We call it as heterotrophic mode of nutrition. There are three main types of heterotrophic mode of nutrition we have discussed, that is saprophytic nutrition, the parasitic nutrition, and the holozoic mode of nutrition. The first one, the saprophytic mode of nutrition. The saprophytic nutrition is a nutrition in which an organism obtains its food from the dead plants and animals, like rotten leaves, dead and decaying animals and other decaying organic matters. And the best example for this would be the mushroom and the bread molds. The second one is a parasitic mode of nutrition. A parasitic mode of nutrition, it is a nutrition in which organism derives its food from the body of another organisms. Okay, it is called as a parasitic nutrition. So the best example is an roundworm, or it is an ascaris, which is present in the humans. And one more example which is present is an leech which sucks the blood. And in case of plant it would be an cuscuta, the best example. This is about the parasitic mode of nutrition. And the last one we'll discuss today is an holozoic nutrition. This is a type of nutrition in which an organism takes the complex organic food materials and it is digested and absorbed into the body cells of an organisms. Okay, the organisms takes the food inside the body, and inside the body the food is digested and absorbed by the cells. The human beings is the most common example of an holozoic mode of nutrition. So now we'll discuss the nutrition in case of unicellular organisms. Amoeba is an aquatic unicellular protozoans which lives at the bottom of the freshwater streams. Okay, it is a microscopic organisms, and we cannot see this amoeba with the naked eyes. And these microscopic organisms feeds on a microscopic animals such as bacteria, decaying food particles, and the microscopic plants that float in the water body. So the process of obtaining the food by the amoeba, we call it as a phagocytosis. And the word phagocytosis means the self-feeding. So amoeba has no mouth. Okay, the amoeba ingests the food by using an pseudopodia. These pseudopodia are the finger-like protoplasmic protections which fuse projections, and this finger-like extension of the cell surface which fuses with food particles, and they are going to form an food vacuole. And the process of digestion takes place inside this food vacuole by the means of digestive enzymes. Okay, inside the food vacuole the complex substances are broken down into the simpler ones, which then diffuses into the cytoplasm, and the remaining undigested material which is present is moved out of the body. Then this is how the digestion takes place in amoeba. Okay, now there is one more unicellular organism, the paramecium. The paramecium is also an unicellular organism, but this organism has a definite shape, and it has a specific food is taken to a specific spot. The food is moved to this spot by the movement of cilia, which cover the entire surface of the cell. Today, now we'll discuss the nutrition in case of complex multicellular organisms. The organism consisting of more than one cell to perform a specific functions are called as multicellular organisms. And the human beings, the cow, the rat, the dog, all come under the multicellular organisms. So today we'll in detail study how the nutrition occur in case of human beings. Human beings are the heterotrophic omnivorous organisms which obtain their food by the plants and also by the animals by the means of holozoic mode of nutrition. In nutrition, in case of animals, it consists of five main important steps. That is the process of ingestion, the digestion, the absorption, assimilation, and the egestion. So we'll study the one by one steps involved in the digestion. First one is the ingestion. The term ingestion means eating of the food. The process of taking the food into the body, we call it as an ingestion. Next one is the digestion. Digestion means the process by which a large insoluble molecules of the food are broken down into small soluble absorbable form is called as an digestion. The next one is an absorption. What is this absorption? Absorption is a process by which the digested soluble food passes through the intestinal wall and enters into the bloodstream. The assimilation. Assimilation means the process by which an absorbed food is taken up by the body cells. This is called as an assimilation. The last one is an egestion. It is a process by which an undigested food is thrown out of the body. We will discuss these five important processes in details as we move on to the further session of this part. The nutrition in man takes place through the human digestive system, and the human digestive system includes a group of organs and their associated digestive glands. So the digestive system consists of a long continuous canal. We call it as an alimentary canal. The human alimentary canal is a long tube extending from the mouth to the anus. It is about 9 meters in length, and it consists of the following important organs, that is mouth or the buccal cavity, the pharynx, the esophagus or esophagus, stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, and the anus. These all organs are involved in the process of nutrition, that is the ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and the egestion. Now we will discuss the various steps of digestion in details. The digestion in human starts with the ingestion of the food through the mouth, or the buccal cavity. And the buccal cavity contains the teeth, the tongue, and the salivary glands. The tongue is a muscular, movable, flat structure. It bears a taste buds to identify the nature of the food. It moves and helps the food to mix with saliva. It also helps in the speech. The next important one is the teeth. The teeth are the hard structures which are used for chewing, cutting, and crushing the food. And these teeth are made up of a substance called as dentine. So the teeth helps in crushing the food into a smaller particles. And then we have salivary glands. The salivary glands secrete saliva, and in a day about 1 to 1.5 liter of saliva is produced in a buccal cavity. This saliva, what is secreted, contains the water, the salts, the mucus, and an important enzyme called as salivary amylase. This salivary amylase acts on the starch and the glycogen and converts them into simple sugar. The food is mixed thoroughly with the saliva and moved around the mouth while chewing by the muscular tongue. There is an activity to demonstrate the action of saliva on a starch. So take two test tubes and name the test tubes as A and the B. And in both the test tubes, you add 1 ml of 1% starch solution. In one of the test tubes, say the test tube as A, add 1 ml of saliva and leave this both the test tubes undisturbed for about 20 to 30 minutes. After 20 to 30 minutes, add a few drops of iodine solution to the both the test tubes. In which test tubes do you observe the color change now? And what does this indicate about the presence or absence of a starch in these two test tubes? And what does this tell us about the action of saliva on starch? See, the mixture in test tube B turns blue, showing the presence of the starch, and the mixture in the test tube A does not turn blue, indicating the absence of starch. What does it mean? The salivary amylase present in the saliva has broken down the starch into an soluble sugar, and this experiment shows the action of saliva on the starch. So now the slightly digested or the partially digested food in the mouth is swallowed by the tongue and goes down the food pipe called as an esophagus. Esophagus is also called as the food pipe. It is a long tubular structure which carries the food from the pharynx to the stomach. Okay, the walls of this esophagus have muscles which contract and relax alternatively. It is necessary to move the food in a regulated manner along the digestive tube. And when the slightly digested food enters the esophagus, the walls of the food pipe undergo the contraction and relaxation which pushes the food into the stomach. And this movement of contraction and relaxation of the muscles of the gut which makes the food enter into the stomach, we call it as an peristaltic movement, and this entire movement we call it as a peristaltic movement, and this movement occurs all along the gut. So the peristaltic movement of the muscular walls of a different digestive organs are responsible for the movement of the food down the alimentary canal as a whole. So the next one we have is the stomach. From the mouth, the food is taken into the stomach through the food pipe or the esophagus. A stomach is a J-shaped large muscular organ which lies on the left side of the abdomen. The partially digested food is further digested in the stomach. It is a large organ which expands on when the food enters into it. The muscular wall of the stomach helps in mixing the food thoroughly with the digestive juices. Okay, the food is broken down into the smaller pieces and churned to form the semi-solid paste. The digestion in the stomach is carried out by the gastric glands, and this gastric glands secretes a gastric juice. This contains a three important gastric juice contains the hydrochloric acid, the mucus, and the pepsin. Okay, the functions of the HCl. It helps in softening the food. It makes the food acidic for the activation of the pepsin. It kills the germs and the bacteria, and lastly it converts the inactive pepsinogen into an pepsin. So the four important functions of HCl. The next we have is a pepsin. The main function of this pepsin is to hydrolyze the proteins. The next we have the mucus. The mucus protects the inner lining of the stomach from the action of the acid under normal conditions. What do you think what happens if the mucus is not secreted? If the mucus is not secreted, the hydrochloric acid causes the erosion of the inner lining of the stomach, leading to the formation of peptic ulcers in the stomach. Next we have is a small intestine. The partially digested food then goes into the small intestine, and the exit of the food from the stomach is regulated by a sphincter muscles. A small intestine is the longest part of the alimentary canal. It is about 6 to 6.5 meter in an adult. The length of a small intestine varies in different animals based on the type of the food they eat. We all know that the cellulose is a carbohydrate which is very difficult to digest. So, the herbivorous animals like cow and goat and other organisms which eat the grass need a longer small intestine to allow the cellulose present in the grass to digest completely. On the other hand, the meat is a food which get digested easily. So the carnivorous animals like tiger, lion have which eat this meat need a shorter small intestine to allow the meat to digest completely. And remember, small intestine is a site of complete digestion of the food. And this small intestine is going to receive the secretions of the liver and the pancreas for the purpose of digestion. Okay, the liver is going to secrete a bile juice. The food coming from the stomach is acidic and has to be made alkaline for the pancreatic enzymes to act. It helps in emulsification of fats. The fats present in the small intestine is in the form of large globules and which makes it difficult for the enzymes to act on them. And these bile salts break them down into smaller globules, increasing the efficiency of enzyme action. Next we have is a pancreas. Pancreas is the second largest gland in our body and it is an heterocrine in nature. It secretes the pancreatic juice which contains the enzymes like trypsin for digesting the proteins and the lipase for the digesting for breaking down other emulsified fats. Okay, the enzymes present in the intestinal juice finally convert the proteins to amino acids, the complex carbohydrates into glucose, and fats into fatty acids and glycerol. Remember, the small intestine is a site of complete digestion of the food, and the digestion is completed in the small intestines. That is, the complex food is broken down into an smaller particles in a small intestine. Next we have is an absorption. The digested food is taken up by the walls of the small intestine. The lining of the small intestine has a numerous finger-like projections which we call it as an villi, and this villi is going to increase the surface area for the absorption. And this villi, if you see, has richly supplied with the blood vessels which take up the absorbed food to each and every part of the cell of the body, where it is utilized for obtaining the energy, building up of new tissues, and the repair of the old tissues. So, the process of using this digested food, we call it as the process of assimilation. Then there is an egestion. Then there is a large intestine. So, the large intestine is about 1.5 to 1.8 meter long and it is about 4 to 6 centimeter in diameter. The unabsorbed food is sent into the large intestine where its wall absorb more of the water from this material. And the rest of the material is removed from the body via the anus. The exit of this waste material is regulated by the anal sphincter. So there is a few questions to you to solve. What is the role of acid in our stomach? And the second question is what is the function of the digestive enzymes? And third is how is the small intestine designed to absorb the digested food? Please solve this answer and keep the questions answers ready. And thank you. You hope you understood what I thought. And in the coming session, we'll study about the next life process. Thank you.